Welcome back to Madman Review. You know, there's a ton of confusion out there about how different handgun calibers actually stop threats. For years, this topic was just filled with myths and a bunch of bad info, mainly because there wasn't much science involved. Even today, some folks think a .380 is as harmless as a bee sting, and there's this weird idea that since a .45 ACP bullet weighs 230 grains, you need to shoot two 9mm bullets each, 115 grains to stop the same threat. So let's talk about how handguns stop threats. First off, we gotta admit that the whole idea of stopping power is kind of a big myth in the handgun world. The term stopping power isn't something you can measure. It's often used to hype up bigger calibers and downplay smaller ones. But the truth is, there's no scientific way to measure or evaluate stopping power. Like why a .45 ACP would be better at stopping a threat than a 9mm. In this video, we'll talk about handgun calibers and bullets, and the truth surrounding their use in self-defense situations that's not a lot of people seem to know about. Are FMJs effective? When it comes to self-defense ammo, you want something that can go 12 to 18 inches deep in ballistic gelatin and expand by at least 50%. That's what the FBI recommends. Of the two, getting deep enough is more important. You've got to hit the vital organs to really stop someone. A big wound that's not deep enough isn't going to cut it. FMJ bullets don't expand, and they're great at penetrating. The downside, sometimes they go too far, which is where a good JHP bullet comes in handy. It can penetrate deep enough and also expand. Now, don't get me wrong, I like FMJ bullets for certain situations, but I'm also into hollow points, flat noses, and FTMs, depending on what's going on. We'll talk more about FTMs later. I use FMJ in my 9mm when I'm at my weekend spot doing maintenance. Where I'm at, there are poachers and vandals around, usually armed and up to no good. I go with FMJ because I've got a house, a bunk apartment, storage, barns, a hay barn, and a mechanic shop on my property. If these troublemakers try to hide behind a wall, and trust me, there are plenty of walls, I need to be able to shoot through that wall, or if they're behind their vehicle, I need my bullets to go into that vehicle. What's the deal with JHPs? So if you've got a round that can go deep enough into an attacker, the next thing is picking the right bullet for defense. For most situations, a jacketed hollow point is your best bet. JHPs are great because they expand, and more expansion means a bigger wound. If all a handgun bullet does is tear through tissue, then a bullet that gets bigger and makes a larger hole is definitely a plus. But does a bigger, expanded bullet make a huge difference if it doesn't hit something crucial? Not exactly, but it could make the attacker bleed out quicker. A big plus of JHPs is they usually don't go straight through the target and risk hitting someone else. But remember, some hollow point designs are just gimmicks. Your job is to pick a good one. Now, hollow points aren't perfect for every gun and caliber. For example, the .32 ACP, it's not great with JHPs. In .32 ACP, JHPs tend to expand too soon, slowing the bullet down and not going deep enough. They might work better in a gun with a longer barrel, but long-barreled .32 ACPs aren't common. The same applies to .22 LR in small guns. In some cases, you're better off with an FMJ to make sure the bullet goes deep enough. What's the scoop on fluted bullets, aka FTMs? So, there's this cool new bullet tech ammo makers referred to as FTMs, which stands for Fluid Transfer Monolithic. It's really shaking up how we think about handgun calibers for self-defense. Ones like the Lehigh Defense Extreme Defense and Extreme Penetrator, the Interceptor ARX, and the Norma NXD, all of which are non-expanding, have this unique nose shape that allows for deep, straight penetration and creates a wound cavity even bigger than some expanding bullets. These bullets cause serious damage when they hit. The secret's in their nose design. The fluid transfers flutes push the hydraulic energy inside, and then, as it's squeezed, it bursts out, causing high-pressure spikes and a lot of damage to the surrounding tissue. This sudden increase in fluid movement makes cavitation and does massive tissue damage, similar to the best hollow points out there. What you end up with is a wound cavity that's bigger than what you'd get with flat or round-nosed bullets, and often even larger than traditional or solid copper expanding bullets. These fluted bullets can create a huge permanent wound cavity and still hit that ideal 18 inches of penetration. This rapid increase in fluid flow can cause cavitation and huge tissue damage, kind of like what you see with the biggest hollow points. But here's a key thing to remember. Of all the FTM bullets out there, there was the solid copper ones like the Lehigh Defense Extreme Defense and Extreme Penetrator bullets that really showed their worth during the 2016-17 Joint Agency Ballistic Test for Defensive Handgun Ammunition, which was a big test done by a bunch of federal, state, and local agencies, security teams, and ballistics experts. Stopping a threat in self-defense situations. When it comes to self-defense, there are basically 3 ways you can stop a threat. The first is hit the really important parts, like the brain, heart, or lungs. It's the fastest way to stop a threat. Second is just hitting the bad guy, making him change his mind. The bullet doesn't even need to be lethal. Just getting hit can make them change their mind. Sometimes you don't even need to fire. Showing your gun can be enough to scare them off. The third is hitting the bad guy and cause a lot of bleeding, but this might take a while. The body needs all its blood to function, and the more blood someone loses, the quicker he'll pass out and eventually, die. Here's the thing, a .45 bullet to the brain works the same as a .22 LR to the brain. And no, despite what you might read online, a .22 LR bullet doesn't bounce around inside causing extra damage any more than other bullets do. The same rule applies to hitting the heart or lungs. The size of the bullet isn't as critical as its ability to hit the right spot. What's really important is how good the shooter is at getting those bullets where they need to go. The most important thing to consider in handgun calibers. It all boils down to how deep the bullet can go. With handguns, it's all about the damage the bullet does when it hits something. There aren't any fancy extra effects with regular handguns. They don't create a shockwave that causes more damage. They don't dump a bunch of energy into the target. Sure, handgun covers a lot of ground, but we're talking about your usual handguns here, not something like AR pistols. A bullet from a pistol should be able to go through at least 12 inches of 10% ballistic gel. That's set up right. We're not made of gel, but the FBI, who came up with this standard, figured out that if a bullet can get that deep in the gel, it's likely to hit the important stuff inside a person that, if hit, can stop them in their tracks. Even smaller calibers like the .22 LR, 32 ACP, and 380 ACP can do this if you pick the right kind of bullet. Arguments about the minimum caliber. Let's talk about the minimum caliber debate. This is about what's considered the smallest caliber you should use for defense. People often say 1 round is the least you should go, and anything bigger is obviously better. Sometimes folks say 9mm is that minimum. Other times it's 380 ACP, also known as 9mm short. Honestly, I think this minimum caliber debate is kind of pointless. There are calibers I wouldn't use, like 25 ACP, which is pretty tiny, but I also wouldn't go for a .44 Magnum. There's more to it than just size. The 25 ACP, it's not great at penetrating, and the .45 Magnum, it kicks like a mule and is loud, making it hard to shoot accurately again quickly. Plus, think about the size of the gun and how hard it is to hide. But I'd totally use a .22 LR with the right ammo and gun. I do carry a 380 ACP every day, and with the right ammo and proper shot placement, it can stop a threat just as fast as a .45 ACP. Why don't we all just carry .22 LR then? Well, for starters, rimfire calibers are nowhere near as reliable as centerfire calibers. But the real question is, why has 9mm become the go-to round for most gun owners and the industry? It's a solid cartridge for sure, it's super common, the standard for NATO, and is usually pretty cheap and easy to find. Plus, 9mm guns can hold a lot of rounds, and when it's in hollow point form, it's pretty effective. For people like police officers and soldiers, 9mm is also good at getting through stuff like glass, car doors, thin walls, and heavy clothes. That might not be a big deal for everyday folks carrying concealed, but for law enforcement and military, it's important. Basically, 9mm is like the Swiss Army knife of bullets. So what about rounds like 40 S&W, 357 SIG, and 10mm? What's their edge over the 9mm or other calibers like the .22 LR? They're better at getting through barriers and tend to go deeper, but when does that extra depth really matter? If a 9mm can hit the vital organs, why do you need a bullet that goes deeper? Take the 1986 Miami shootout, which led the FBI to start using 10mm. A 9mm bullet missed a criminal's heart by just an inch. Back then, 9mm ammo wasn't as good as it is now, and that bullet had to go through the guy's arm first, which slowed it down. So in weird shooting angles, the deeper penetration of 40 S&W, 357 SIG, and 10mm can be a plus. But remember, it's a can-be situation, not a will-be. There are too many variables to guarantee that extra penetration will always make the difference. Bigger bullets for bigger problems. Let's just get something straight. We're mainly talking about handling human threats here. But if you're in a situation where you're against something like a bear, that's a whole different ballgame. In that case, I definitely recommend packing something like a .44 Magnum or a 10mm loaded with hard-cast lead bullets. Bears are a whole different story. They're way bigger, tougher, and harder to get through than any human, which is way beyond what the FBI was thinking about when they came up with those gel block tests. Final thoughts. To sum it up, for self-defense against people, the size of the bullet isn't the be-all and end-all. What really matters is how deep the bullet can go and where you hit. This whole idea of stopping power and hydrostatic shock, or bullets dumping energy, that's not really a thing with handguns. And no, you don't need to double tap someone with 9mm just because it's lighter than a .45 ACP bullet. A well-placed 380 ACP round can be just as effective at stopping a threat as a 9mm, 40 S&W, or .45 ACP. Sure, having a bullet that expands is cool, but it's never going to beat accurate shooting and making sure your bullet goes deep enough. So, if your gun and ammo can penetrate well enough and you're good at hitting your target, you're all set. And that's it for this video. If it was helpful or entertaining, please consider leaving a like, subscribing, and sharing this video with your friends. Tap that bell icon too for more. Thanks for watching, and stay safe out there.